And in this episode, we're going to show you guys how to hang a deer up from a meat pole and get it, skin it out and get it ready to take to the butcher. Start out by keeping your deer clean, and throughout this whole process, we're going to make sure that we keep as much hair and dirt off this animal. So when we take it into the butcher, we got an excellent example of a nice clean animal, and that'll go a long way with our butcher. Okay. When I'm skinning an animal, I'm always cutting from the inside out. So what I'm trying to do is avoid, try to avoid cutting hair. If I cut this way, I'm going to cut a bunch of hair, and it's going to free up a bunch more hair to wind up eventually on the meat. And so you see I work my way down a little ways here, and you can see this is his leg bone here, and then there's this tendon back here. This tendon is super tough. So where I usually either tie a rope through here, or in this case we're going to run a stick through here and tie a rope to the stick, but it's a really tough part of the deer. So just make sure you don't cut that when you're skinning them out. I'm going to find a good sturdy stick, and there's lots of sticks laying around here, and I'm going to run it through between the leg and that tendon there. Run it right through. Put one lock on there. That should do it. Okay, and then this rope goes up and over the meat pole. A couple ways we can get this guy hung up. If we've got a couple guys, like I said, you can haul him up. One guy hauling the rope, the other guy lifting him up. Because I'm solo here, I'm going to try the truck method, and that might mean we might have a little disaster, but I'm sure it'll all work out fine. So we'll see how it goes. The one thing I'm going to try and do the whole time is I want to make sure that I skin from the top down. And the reason why I do that is because every time you cut the skin a little bit, some hair frees up, and that gravity is going to pull that hair down. And with sticky meat, the meat's going to be a little bit sticky when you get it up, it's just going to attract all that hair. So what I'm going to make sure is that as I work my way down, there's clean meat above it and then hair and body below it. So as a general theory of how to skin out an animal, I go with the X method here. I'm going to run my knife up here, cutting away from the meat and through the hide and then out through the hair. I'm going to do that X here, and then I'm going to do the same X coming out on these arms. And then I'm just going to basically peel the hide back away from the animal, and like I said, from the top down. And I have better knives for this, which I'm going to break out here. That's better. Okay. Now, because I'm back in camp, I've got access to my butchering kit here. So, got a couple of bigger knives that might make the job a little easier. So this is probably, right in here is probably one of the trickier parts, because you kind of got, for one thing, that you're not going on my principle of going from top down, you're working your way back up here. So what I'm actually looking for is this penis, and there it is right there. And once I find it, I'm gonna cut it. I want to keep it attached to the animal, and the rest of it I can take off now. I can get the balls and everything and work my way back and up and over. Okay, so you can see his penis is attached, and I'm starting to work his balls and the rest of his stuff off to the back here. So if you want to come right in here, we can kind of look at the concept of skinning. So I'll show you once you get through some of that technical stuff, you got to kind of work your way around, but once you start getting going and you're actually skinning them down, I'll show you what I do here. So I take a handful of hair and I kind of pull it away from the animal, and then you can see this this white tissue here, this connective tissue. I just touch it with the knife, and it usually kind of pulls away. Now I'm always trying to keep the blade I don't want to cut the animal. See, I cut them a little bit there. I want to kind of cut towards the hide as I'm going. And get a handful of it here and work your way down. Now so around the rump here, there's a little less of that sort of soft connective tissue that we had over here, and it's almost like the skin is right on the fat, so you end up actually cutting. It's really hard to just cut the hide off here, so it's a little bit trickier. So sometimes you'll make a hole, but that's actually kind of good. You can stick your finger through it and it gives you something to pull on. Now I'm gonna come up on the tail here in a second, and it gets a little tricky around there, and then after that it should be pretty smooth sailing. So this guy's actually in really good shape. You can see he's got lots of fat, you know, yeah, lots of fat on him. So we're probably not gonna eat that fat though. We'll probably have the butcher take it off, because particularly on a mule deer, that fat holds a lot of flavor, holds a lot of deery flavor, or what people often say, gamey flavor or whatever. So now I'm coming around the tail here. Now this is where I got to do something. Normally I would just cut the tail off here. So if you're in a state or province that they don't make you keep the tail on, I would just cut right through the bone here, which I think is much more sanitary. But in this case, we're in Canada now, or in BC now, we have to keep the tail on. So I have to skin around it and leave the tail out. And then I'm going to cover it up with plastic so that all the hair doesn't wind up on my nice clean meat. Like I was saying, we got to leave the tail attached to the animal so that they can be identified. So this is a mule deer tail. But just because it's quite dirty and it's got a lot of hair on it, I'm just concerned about it falling on the meat. So just take a plastic bag over it. One thing you can do is grab a handful of hide, and then you can actually just kind of push it down, and that'll skin it down a little ways. Now this is a whole lot easier when it's warm. You can actually just pull the hide right off. Or you can look at our truck method video where you just pull the whole hide off using the truck. But you can get a bit of a gainer just pushing it down as you go. And eventually, I gotta kind of match up these cuts somehow. So lifting them up a little bit with the truck just to make it a little easier to work on. And I've got most of this technical stuff done here, so I can probably just try to push down here a little bit and get a bit of a gainer. You gotta be careful too as you're doing this. You got a really solid meat pole above you that's not gonna come collapsing on top of you. Okay, so there's a couple things I do just near the end here before I put it in a game bag. I just go over the whole thing and brush off, from the top down, brush off any dirt or hair. And I just use this little nail brush. It just seems to do the job for me. You can use paper towel. Damp paper towel sometimes helps pick up the hair. Now we did pretty good here. We got a little bit of hair here and there, but looking pretty great. The last thing I do is I go over and I take off anything that I'm not planning to eat, that I don't want to have come back to me from the butcher. So there's a big hunk of tallow here. I can go ahead and just pull that off. There's also this bloodshot meat, which is not going to be edible, so I can go ahead and cut that out now. You can take it to the butcher like this, and he'll cut it out for you, but he's going to charge you to do it. Basically, but most butchers I know you pay for the weight that goes into the butcher, and so he's just going to cut it off for first thing. So might as well do it yourself. So as you start pulling away the layers of the flank here, you'll see that there's blood that's been sort of pushed up in between the different muscle layers here. And you know, once that blood is saturated, it's really not going to be able to, or once that meat's saturated or the soft tissue is saturated, it's not really going to be table fare. So you just go ahead and cut it off. Now, if you've hit bone, you're going to find that this is actually quite good for the shot. It's very limited what the blood shot is, but if you've hit the shoulder, you'll find the area is quite a bit larger, and you'll just got to cut away a little bit. Okay, so that's just a big piece of back fat that I've worked off in here. You know, some guys will say you got to remove all of this right away, particularly on an older, stinky or mule deer buck that's coming into the rut. I like to leave a little bit on here just because it does protect the meat. Because this guy's got to go a little ways yet before we get to the butcher. So I'll leave a little bit on so that the meat's not exposed. Like that's basically the end of your tenderloin, or your loin chop here, or the top of your rump. So you want to keep that nice and clean and let the butcher do, you know, let it hang for a while and let the butcher deal with it. But I'll take a little bit more of this off. Hey, so now that we're all cleaned up and done here, this guy's ready to go to the butcher. Now, if we're gonna hang him out here for a few more days and continue to hunt, we gotta make sure we cover him up with game bags in order to keep you can see the flies and the wasps are on him, and there's also gonna be some birds around. You can actually see where some of the birds worked their way in and ate some of the fat out of the inside. So we'll get them covered up. So my mom sewed me up these deluxe full-size game deer bags, and how they work, they just one bag for one deer. Okay, so the really important thing we want to make sure is that there's no way for a fly to get in here. So I want to make sure I tuck my game bag right around everything, and then I'm actually just going to take my electrician's tape and seal it up. All right. So, anyways, that's a done deal. So no flies or nothing get on there. It stay nice and clean for when we're hanging it here. It's also great for transporting the animal. It's in a bag. This bag will allow it to breathe as opposed to plastic, which won't allow it to breathe. So this guy's good here. The temperature is about 6 degrees here. It's getting down to 0 overnight. So we're really comfortable. I'm comfortable hanging this deer for 5 days if we want, 5, 6, 10 days, as long as those temperatures stay below 6 degrees. I'm super comfortable. But yeah, great stuff anyways.